The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. It is great to be back. We've been off last week, just revitalizing, refreshing, getting ready for this long haul. Training camps creeping right around the corner. And before you know it, we'll be getting into preseason talk and eventually regular season football. So we are on our way there. We are just cracking the forefront of the summer season. So very excited that that's going to be coming along soon. We got guests already in the chat. Al Pierce, our good friend, Tighten Up Gentlemen, Go Titans, Kick Massive Tail, and our buddy Lou Man. Always good seeing you in the show, Lou. I haven't got to see much of you lately, so great seeing you in here tonight. So I know everybody was asking me, especially, where were you, Big Mike? Well, honestly, I just took the week off because it was my birthday. I spent some time with my wife and my kids, and it was just nice to refresh and just relax a little bit. Like I said, I've got a long stretch coming up, especially with training camp, with preseason football. So it's just kind of nice to have this little bit of downtime. Plus, I had a chance to write, especially since I'm a contributor from Titan Size. So I've been doing a little writing on the side. Hopefully, I'll get those sent out soon. So keep your eye on the fan-sided website, as those should be coming out fairly soon. So I've been pretty busy, but trying to get a little bit of rest in while I've got the opportunity to. So it's just nice to be refreshed, nice to be back on the Power Hour, welcoming our friends into the show. We will have Buck Reising in. I'm just waiting to get a response back, so hopefully we should be no hurry. We'll get him in as soon as possible. No problems. We got a great show lined up for you. Let's dig into it. I am Michael Bishop, your host. Welcome to the Power Hour. And as we get started, let's jump into our top news of the day. And it has been a busy one, especially with getting back on the right track of things. So let's get into it. So it seems starting out right now that the Denver Broncos now have a new owner. That's right. It appears that Rob Walton, one of the Walton family members and more well known as the heir of the Walmart and Sam's Club fortune, has now become the sole owner of the Denver Broncos at an estimated $4.5 billion bid, the highest in sports team history. Of this purchase, he will now be the sole owner of the Denver Broncos, which will probably just come down to a league vote, which will probably more than likely be unanimous. And I did a story about him probably maybe about a month, maybe 2 months ago, and this was a really hot topic. I knew that Walton definitely had the money to back it up. I knew that they'd been trying to get in the NFL for quite a long time, so not very surprising that this has happened. I think that for Denver, I think they've got an owner that's probably not going to be afraid to spend. He's very thrifty, but at the same time, he's a very spontaneous person that's not going to interfere with the people that make the right decisions business wise. I mean, there's a reason why this man's made millions of dollars. So along those lines, you think from that perspective, this guy wanted to get in the NFL. Now he has the NFL team that has a very, very high upside, especially with Russell Wilson coming in the fold. The defense is revamped, and I think that this offensive line is probably one of the best offensive lines in the league. So it's very interesting, especially when these guys get into the league. But I expect him to be just a very hands-off guy. He's going to hire the right people, I think, along those lines. He knows what he's doing. In these instances, you've got a great core in place. You've got great people and smart people that make this kind of money. Listen to those people up in those positions. And for the better part of this, I think this is a good move for the Denver Broncos. I think along the lines, especially knowing that this could potentially get them a new stadium down the road somewhere, that they have an owner that would potentially put in the money there. But along those lines, it's very interesting to me. You see a man, once again, in this kind of setting where he comes in, buys a team that's really at the top of its game right now. And really, Denver stock is as high as it's been in years. So Walton investing into a team and inheriting a team with quite a bit of talent, and I think this is going to be a very good year for Denver. I think they're a playoff team. I think they could potentially give Kansas City some fits in the division. So, along those lines, I think it's going to be an interesting setup going forward with this. I think Walton's a good fit for the Denver Broncos, and I'm sure that he's going to do whatever he can to help the team improve with an already stellar roster in place. So, Walton definitely stepping in and handling business on that side of things. In our next story, it would appear that Ryan Fitzpatrick is officially retired from the league, but also there's now some interest in him starting up his television career, as it would appear that Ryan Fitzpatrick is probably trying to bring that Fitz magic to Thursday Night Football on Prime Video. So once again, it looks like that they're trying to add another strong personality that they can have good football experience with the already stellar team in place at Amazon Prime. And I like Ryan Fitzpatrick. I really felt that his personality is one that just stands out. I think he's just a very likable person. There's not too much you can really look at him flaw wise. I think, of course, you look at the aspect of somebody that's never been in television, that they kind of have to work out those kind of kinks and those little hit and miss kind of moments. But at the same time, I'm very interested to see what he can bring to the television crew at Prime Video. I really feel that he's got the good kind of personality that's very adaptable to today's football fan. He's savvy. The man's a Harvard graduate, if anything, which is the most impressive thing about his entire football career, other than the fact that he stayed in the league for 17 years. But I still feel that you have to have personality. You have to have somebody that's relatable, that's likable. And I just look at Fitzpatrick, and the guy just has every little bit of it. It looks like the kind of home run that they could hit and bring in a person that could just definitely have the opportunity to help elevate Amazon Prime's Thursday night lineup. I think you have to find personality there, and he definitely has shown that, especially in the latter part of his career. He's more relaxed, he's more calm. I think with the television thing, you definitely have to have growing pains there to see if you can fit in how you handle putting yourself out there in front of a massive audience is a lot different than playing in front of it because you really don't have to talk to it. But I do think that this is a good place for him. I do think that it's a great addition if they get this deal done. You really have to have that kind of guy that just gets the attention of everyone. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick definitely delivers on that. So wherever they decide to put him on that, whether it's eventually in the booth, whether it's eventually as an analysis on their Thursday night program, I think wherever he'll end up, he's a great fit. And I think it's a very big win for Thursday night football if they can get this deal hammered through. And in our next news story, it's just been very apparent that it's just not a very good trader's market for quarterbacks this year. As we've seen so far, Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield continue to be without a place to play, at least from a standpoint where they know that they're going to get traded eventually or released. Both quarterbacks basically sitting at the driver's seat, knowing that they're going to be eventually unseated for a rookie quarterback in one position and for another astounding veteran with astounding problems, I might also say, if you're the Cleveland Browns. So, really, both situations are different but the same. I look at Baker Mayfield and I see a quarterback that basically no one wants right now because of his attitude, because of just his personality and his locker room presence. It's been a hard sell. And not to mention, the Browns have also been trying to get somebody to try and bite on his salary. Carolina and Seattle have definitely become stay points in this conversation, but it's also interesting to know that Baker Mayfield eventually probably could be traded eventually, maybe even before training camp starts. I do think that it's possible. I think some of these guys are kind of in a situation where they know that there's the inevitability where they have to feel a little comfortable with a quarterback. And the same would go with Jimmy Garoppolo. But within his situation, is Trey Lance ready to step up and be the guy? I know you've heard some reports, especially out there, that some think that Lance is basically behind and is just not transitioning as we would think he would. And then there's other reports saying that it's the opposite. So the biggest thing is you have two potential quarterbacks that could make a difference on both rosters, depending on which roster they go on. So my biggest selling point is whether it be Baker Mayfield taking on his salary or whether it be Jimmy Garoppolo knowing that he has a history of injuries, which is the safer bet? I mean, both quarterbacks have the potential to help any kind of franchise, but along the lines, I think it's more along maybe a 3 or 4 year kind of deal where you eventually just have them kind of fill in space and eventually you draft a quarterback for the future. I don't think that they're long term solutions for anything. I think, if anything, Garoppolo might be the better of the two. But if I really had to choose any of them, it's really just along the lines of the public persona and opinion. Nobody wants them because one is just uncertain with injuries and the other's uncertain because of just simple attitude. I mean, you can't have somebody that's going to disrupt the locker room presence, and you can't have somebody that's not going to be consistent on the football field. So, really, I still think it's eventually going to go down to training camp. I think somebody's going to eventually get desperate and have to sign a quarterback due to injury or due to some unforeseeable circumstance. It's a long road ahead, but at the same time, I really look along these quarterbacks, especially knowing if you're a team that needs a guy that can just hold the reins and hold the team, I would go Jimmy Garoppolo. I feel more comfortable with him. I think with Baker Mayfield, it's just an attitude situation. It's been that way for the last couple of years, and it just doesn't bode well, especially with any team that's looking for somebody that can just keep the locker room presence on an even keel. And it's just one thing Baker Mayfield just can't do. But it will be interesting going forward, especially knowing that somebody is going to eventually have to choose one of these quarterbacks. Along those lines, like I said, Garoppolo seems like the best bet, but that's just my 2 cents on the take. And then in breaking news today, it appears finally now that Aaron Donald has decided to come back and play football, at least up until 2024, meaning that Donald has now signed officially a restructured contract that basically gives him about a $40 million raise, putting him roughly about maybe he could potentially see around $95 million right before 2024 if he decides to retire. So essence, in essence of all of it, you're looking at about a deal that would basically guarantee him about $65 million for the next 2 years, and then could potentially add more on to the next one if he decides to come back. So it's roughly about a 30 to $40 million raise. And once again, everybody argues about the salary cap. Everybody argues that it's just non existent at this point. And I just have to laugh at it. It was just good financing. So it's really a situation. The Rams knew they wanted to keep him long term. He's arguably the best defensive player in the league. I've never seen any player that has had this kind of dominance, maybe since Lawrence Taylor. So Aaron Donald to me is the essential piece that the Rams had to keep in place on their defense to keep them viable. And Lou Man brings up a great point right there. Stan's got cash. And of course he does. And that's the best point right there. You know, that's one of the big things about being in the Hollywood area. You're going to spend money. You want to look big. Everything's flashy. They're in one of the most beautiful stadiums in Southern California. So along those lines, the Rams have to live the part, especially looking the part after winning a Super Bowl and live in that LA kind of sense, big lifestyle. So it only makes sense you go out and you sign Aaron Donald to an extension. You know he's a key piece. You know he's the most dominant defensive player we've seen maybe in decades. I just don't see how you couldn't get that done. And it's good for the Rams that they do this. It's good, especially in the long term of things. It's no sense. It doesn't make any sense that you don't try and go after your best player. And let's be honest, Aaron Donald is the Rams' best player. That's not named Matthew Stafford. That's not named Cooper Cup. As good as the offense is, the defense was just as good. And even with all the talent that they have on there, Aaron Donald is the heartbeat of that defense, and you have to keep that in mind. So going forward, you have to lock that down. You have to make sure your key guys are in this kind of position to be successful. And like I said, the only players that I can think of that have had this kind of dominance, that have gone to like multiple Pro Bowls, you have Derek Thomas, you have Lawrence Taylor. And those are like just right off the top of my mind. So the Rams get this job done. They get their star player locked in for at least another few years, and they could potentially run it back with the talent that they have. And it wouldn't be surprising if they did. And then finally, in news, unfortunately, it was something that we didn't get to cover since we were off. And it was definitely a little heartbreaking in the sense Marion Barber III had been found dead in his apartment and at the age of 38. And you hate these situations because there's always players like this in situations where you only hear about them, and it's always in a negative sense. And that's the unfortunate part. After Marion Barber had left the league, the only other few times that you've really heard about him is maybe through just negative reports, one arrest through misdemeanors, and another one in the same light, another misdemeanor. I believe it was back in 2019. So this one really was just a little upsetting because I lived in Dallas for a time and I actually got to win this Marion Barber play. And he was really a phenomenal player when he had the opportunity to get up and actually start. So it was really along the lines when Julius Jones was drafted with the Cowboys and he was their guy for the time. And Marion Barber had just come out of Minnesota and was pretty dominant, especially for the position that he was playing in Minnesota, because you don't hear a lot of great running backs coming out of Minnesota. But Barber definitely fit the bill of what a prototypical running back with that kind of power had when he had the ball in his hands. And, along the lines, you saw a guy that was very quiet. You saw a guy that was very just to himself. It was reported that he really didn't like the limelight. He was more just accepting to just give credit to others instead of himself. And it was really a situation where, he was thrust into the limelight very quickly, especially when he had the opportunity to. And I just remember this was just a very young, physical, just elite back that I thought was going to run for maybe 6 or 7 years and just cause the league problems. And it was unfortunate that he just didn't get to have the kind of career that most dominant running backs do. You see guys like this come in and they take the league by storm, maybe for about 3 or 4 years, and then they just kind of pitter away. And one of the key factors there with Barber was injuries. And it's just very upsetting because you feel like you just got to see somebody just come in and dominate for just a very brief time. And it's like just, it's gone like just a very, it's basically like an Indian summer. It just comes and it goes. And that's just basically the best way I can describe Marion Barber's career. His career just came and went. And it was something very spectacular to be held. I mean, I've never saw a player dominate the way that they did when they had the opportunity to be the guy. And Al Pierce does bring up a great point right here. Uh, it was, did Barber have concussion issues? And it was really a lot of things, Al. It was really concussions was one of the situations. One of the other situations, it was just health. I think it was really along the lines you had a guy that just couldn't stay healthy, especially when they're getting into the fourth year of the league. Wear starts showing up, especially on running backs that are that versatile and really get used a lot. So Barber really just kind of got beat down a little bit. And it was unfortunate because even before he became a star with the Dallas Cowboys, when Bill Parcells was rebuilding the Miami Dolphins at the time, when he was hired to be their vice president of football operations, he was trying to bring in Marion Barber because they wanted to bring him in and make him a key factor in their rebuild. So I'll give Jerry Jones credit for this. Every once in a while, he does make a good move that's beneficial to the team. And keeping Marion Barber at the time was very beneficial to them. I really felt, especially knowing that they had to just replace Julius Jones, which was coming off injuries on his own, that they felt Barber was the more athletic back, that they fit the mold more than anything. And really, I think he complimented Tony Romo, especially when his time was there at Dallas was at an end. I think right there, I mean, Tony Romo's job was a little easier having Marion Barber in the backfield. And then eventually he goes to Chicago, and unfortunately, injuries catch up to him there. And it's a player that retires because of injuries. And it's a sad situation. We only know mostly about him just because of arrest reports in the last decade. And then this story comes up, and it's unfortunate because it's very hard to just look at those stories and just not think about just the enjoyment that you did get to see these players play when these stories break. And especially when it's a player that passes, you just remember the time that you enjoyed them. You felt like that they were something special. And even along the lines that there's something even more about them than football. And I really felt the way, especially knowing how his teammates spoke about him, that, you saw a guy that was quiet, that had a goofy and fun side to him. And it's unfortunate because, we all see them as athletes every day. We never get to see the personal side of them. And when we hear it from other people and how genuine they are and how enjoyable they can be, it's just definitely just disheartening that we never get to see that side, and that it has to come to these kind of situations where we do hear about it. So a lot of respect to Marion Barber. I enjoyed him as a person just as much as a player, and it's just unfortunate that he's passed away at the age of 38. And we do wish his family all our thoughts and prayers and reflections as they go forward. Well, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break. And when we come back, Treylon Burks has been an enigma. And it's one that we're going to try and talk out and try and make some kind of solution and maybe make some kind of fair assessment that what we can try and assume, can he get back on track? We'll talk about it when we come back. I'm Michael Bishop at the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. We're having a great time. We're having a jam-packed show. We're going to try our best to keep getting a hold of our good friend right now at the moment, where unfortunately it might be technical difficulties. It might be a timing situation. But Reising, we're going to keep getting a hold of him. Hopefully we'll get him on the show. These things happen, everybody. I mean, especially on the fly. It's a busy man, but we're going to do our best to make sure we get him in on the show and hear from his input. So trust me, we're getting on that. No problems. But also in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for joining me on the show tonight. And of course, don't forget, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And don't forget, we are also throwing our contest at the moment to win an Eddie George jersey made from the fine people at Mitchell & Ness. So don't forget, share that with everybody. Make sure that they follow our YouTube page. Make sure that they follow us on Twitter and hashtag us Power Hour Giveaway. We want to give this thing away on July 1st at 12 p.m. So make sure you get this out to everybody. I want to get this out. I want to get this jersey to somebody. So please, the more people you know, the better opportunity we got a chance of getting this out. So spread the word. Joining us in on the chat is our good friend Titanstein Podcast. Tighten up, buddy. Tighten up to you, my friend. Good seeing you on the show. I definitely enjoyed his show while he had Rossi on there. It's good to have Rossi back, too. It's been kind of quiet in the Titans Twitterverse without him, but He's definitely having his presence heard, so it's good to have you back, Rossi, as well. And our buddy Lou Man says, I agree, trade Willis. Now, I don't know about that. I mean, at this point, you either are for Willis or you're not. And I mean, the biggest perception is, can he be the guy? Can he be the quarterback of the future? And, with every player like that, you're going to have questions. Every situation is different. And really, Lou, it just comes down to basically three things. Are they coming into the right environment? Are they coming with the right coach? And are they coming with the right offensive coordinator? And I think Willis has come in the situation with all three of them. So it's not out of the question that he could eventually get a chance to be the starter down the road. I wouldn't do it this year because there's a lot of rawness to him. There's still things he's going to have to work out, especially when it comes to footwork, especially when it comes to reading defenses and just being more patient in the pocket. That's things that can be taught. He's got the talent and the tools to do it. It's just forming them to make sure that he can do it properly and successfully in the league. Well, guys, moving on to our top story of the night, and this one has definitely been one that caught my interest while I was off. And it's just interesting, especially the fact that we know we had to give up one of our top wide receivers in order for this trade to happen. So everybody, of course, is panicking, and it comes down to the curious case of Treylon Burks. The biggest thing I see about this, especially when the story broke, was basically it started with our good friend Al Breer at Sports Illustrated came out and basically said on Monday morning, quarterback, in a quote, one name to watch as the minicamps approach Titans rookie Treylon Burks. A couple of weeks ago, we went over his weight issue at the Monday afternoon quarterback and how it was there for some pre-draft private workouts. I also heard he labored to get through some of these, which was a red flag for certain teams. We'll see what sort of shape he's gotten himself into since. And of course, that right there basically set off a flash bomb in all the Titans Twitterverse and the Titans feeds everywhere. People were just upset. They felt that this was going to fall apart, that basically this was the floor of the house that was getting ready to fall through, and the Titans looked like they bought a pretty shoddy floor. So, a couple days pass, and then it comes down to our good head coach, Mike Vrabel, who sets the president straight. Basically, going in his press conference, asked about the situation. He said, we feel good about every player we draft. That's why we draft them. He's gotten better each day he's been here. I rely on the trainers and our medical staff and try to take care of these guys and communicate with me. So basically, this was a typical Mike Vrabel answer. You were going to get an answer, but you weren't going to get a specific answer. And of course, everybody else was foaming at the mouth to hear from the player himself. And Treylon Burks had been going through this for weeks. So when given the opportunity to speak, he basically gave another simple answer, saying, I'm just taking it one day at a time at the same press conference. So in that situation, we all knew we were going to get the answers, that it was going to be a vague back and forth, just like most of these that kind of come into fruition. I always find it funny, especially when stories come out like this, when guys are struggling in training camp, it always comes down to coming back full circle of how they did in previous draft meetings and previous meets and workouts. And basically, it kind of comes to the same thing. It's like they either went really well or they went really bad. And in Treylon Burks' case, it would seem that some of them went pretty bad. And let's be honest. I mean, we knew Treylon Burks was going to be about a middle of the road draft guy. He was going to go about between 18 to about 26, where Tennessee was going to sit originally. So teams that needed a wide receiver were going to go after him, regardless. And he had enough film. He had enough people talking for him. He had enough interviews for teams to just decide if he was the right fit. And that's what it boils down to. Treylon Burks was going to be the right fit for whatever team that felt comfortable at making that trade or making him as a pick. And when you come down to that, it comes down to the simplest of solutions. you're either going to take the guy or you don't, regardless of how they work out or how they perform. And that happens all the time in the league. Guys have bad workouts all the time. And that could be for a variety of things. It could be they don't like the certain team that they're being courted by. And that's not out of the normal. There's plenty of guys out there that would go out there, maybe have a bad workout. And I'm not saying that, but I'm certainly just kind of nodding that way that it could potentially be that. So, that being said, could Treylon Burks have been kind of just, well, in those workouts, I'm not going to give 100% because maybe I'm not going to be drafted by the teams? I mean, it's a probability. I couldn't rule it out. And it looks like we've got a guest online, and we're going to bring him in. And it looks like Buck Reising is joining us.
Hey, man, I'm sorry for the delay there. I think things kind of got lost in the shuffle. I appreciate you waiting on me.
Well, we appreciate you, sir, for being on the show. So thank you for joining us on the Power Hour tonight.
For sure.
So I will jump you up to speed since we're already on one of our segments. We're just basically having our discussion about Treylon Burks and just all the ongoings that went on during the week. Kind of tardy to the party, but just felt like I had to get my 2 cents in on it. So, Buck, how did you feel about the whole situation going down that week?
With the inhaler, or what he had to say afterwards, or what specifically?
Just specifically, just how all the news reports, Albert Breer's Monday Morning Quarterback article coming out, and then just it seems like pandemonium just kind of struck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd call it pandemonium. I think it's just this is a fairly typical off-season kind of story, right? This is like Mac Jones saying that he's in the best shape that he's ever been, which is just the 1,000th quarterback or professional NFL player to say that on June the 5th or June the 6th, whatever today is, that they're in the best shape they've ever been in their lives, right? These are the kind of things that I think get micro-analyzed because there's so precious little else to talk about. And I mean, it's not nothing, right? It's happened a couple of different times. Every time the media's been out there, we don't have access to every practice, but there's enough of a thread to follow to say, yeah, the guy's clearly got a little bit of work to do, whether it's allergy related or it's conditioning or whatever it is. They won't tell us one way or the other, so it's just kind of speculation season at this point. But yeah, I wouldn't get too bent out of shape about it because they don't play until September.
And there definitely were a lot of speculations, and just to list a few, or at least some that were just kind of just a little funny to me. I think you had weight, asthma, allergies, mental health, poor conditioning, lack of interest. So really just along those lines, I think allergies was the high one going around. So with the inhaler talk going around, it seemed like that was the one everybody was pinning to. And where did that really seem to generate from?
Well, I think just the inhaler. I consider like all those things that you just listed right there are speculation. Like, for example, it could be given that COVID cases are on the rise again. It could be that he had a COVID situation post draft and that he's still trying to get his air back, basically, or something like that. Like it's just a bunch of nothing that we don't have any actual confirmation on one way or the other. Nobody's independently verified anything, and Mike Vrabel's not going to give us information on that at any point, at any time, no matter what it is, other than to snort and laugh at us about, he doesn't think it's pollen related. So like the inhaler, yeah, it was curious. And that was the first day of rookie minicamp where it was the worst that it had been at any point, where it was like clearly limiting him from doing much of anything at all. But beyond that, I mean, I just think that it's kind of like the Tennessee baseball thing with the kid that got suspended, or that they were alleging was getting suspended for PEDs, and it just turned out that he had anxiety. Like, I think it's just a bunch of internet bullshit.
And that's very fair to say, especially when, like you said, you've got a certain amount of time where people are just trying to fill that time with anything that they can. So stories come out, speculations made. But it's always funny, especially in these kind of situations. You think that the first people that you would want to get information for is the trainer, but I'm pretty sure, as you know from experience, you're not going to get a lot out of these trainers, especially if they're trying to keep this a little, between them and the players.
Well, yeah, we don't have access to the trainers, like, unless we're going to be able to do that outside of the conventions of like Titans media availability. Like, they don't make Todd Torricelli the head trainer available. And I mean, I asked Mike about this after the day one of rookie minicamp, where he was clearly laboring, about how much of there is just kind of a learning curve in general for this being their first on field experience with what they want to do. And basically, he said, just to kind of paraphrase, everybody has their trainers and everybody tries to simulate what it is that we're going to be doing once they get there, but there's no possible way that they could do that. And so it's a completely different thing, no matter how quote unquote in shape they're in. It doesn't mean that it's not some combination or some specific thing. If I'm looking at this graphic that you've got up there, it may be two of the six of those things that you have listed on there, right? But they're never going to give us that. And outside of Albert Breer, it just kind of being, I don't think it was even a longer than a paragraph what Breer had to say about some teams thinking that this was the case. I think it was only 5 wide receivers that went before Treylon Burks did in the first round. And, it's not like anybody benefits out of those 5 teams that took a wide receiver over Treylon Burks. It's not like anybody benefits there from talking about Treylon Burks after the fact. So it's always just kind of, you got to consider where these reports are coming from and who they most stand to benefit by having it out in the public discourse.
And of course, going forward, just the biggest question right now is on every Titans fan's mind is, can Treylon Burks break the chain of missed wide receivers? And it's a long list of guys, that have had the opportunity to be the guy at the wide receiver position, and just whether it be health, whether it just be just bad conditioning, it's just never worked out. And AJ Brown being the exception, fans are definitely on their heels right now to see if this trade works out. So I guess the biggest question going forward is, does Burks have that opportunity to make people kind of change their minds if he can progress as training camp gets nearer?
Well, not ahead of training camp. I mean, we probably won't know how many. AJ was here for 3 years. And yeah, we kind of knew out the gate with AJ that he was going to be a little bit different, and that him and I think Corey at the time would have been his rookie year, Corey Davis, AJ Brown's rookie year in 2019, where things kind of hit it off, and they had basically a really good offense in place outside of the quarterback because they were still trying to work around Marcus Mariota at the time, and then they figured it out with Tannehill, and things kind of got off to a little better start. But in reality, the question about Treylon Burks, to have it resolved or definitively so that Treylon Burks is going to be the solution post AJ Brown before training camp, I think is a bit nonsensical. Hell, I don't even know. I'm not even ready to make any kind of judgments on the Titans offense at all until basically October, when we have a more full sample size of what they're going to look like against NFL opponents. I just think that kind of stuff is there's no possible way to realistically answer it other than the kind of speculation that we're talking about here.
And on that standpoint, it's just, I think another question that fans would bring up, would it benefit Burks to have another veteran wide receiver right next to him to learn from that's potentially out there and maybe the free agent market? Could that be something that Tennessee explores maybe down the road?
We'll see what roster cuts bear out, but so I know they have roughly $13.5 million in salary cap money right now post Julio Jones after the June or post June 1st designation that kind of saves money against the cap and spreads that cap hit over 2 years as opposed to just eating it all in one. But half of that's going to be gone with injury pool, with practice squad players now that you have the 16-man practice squad. You're going to have to pay, I think, Malik Willis and I think it's Roger McCreary. There's at least two rookies who are not signed to contracts right now. So, you're talking about at least between $6 and $7 million of that 13.5 projected. We don't know the actual answer to that, in the same way that Over the Cap and Spot Track don't have the actual answers to that because they don't have a look at the Titans or any other NFL team's books. But I don't think that it's realistic to think that the Titans are going to go out on some kind of June spending spree. It's not what they're doing right now. Now I know that's not sexy. That's not great for conversation. I certainly it was different given that I have 3 hours of radio and an hour of streaming show and 2 podcasts to do a week on just this one football team. So it'd be swell if they did something. But I don't think that with the kind of wide receiver money that's going around, even at the lower levels, that Will Fuller is a realistic feasibility. They do their due diligence on guys, so it's not like they haven't looked into. I know Eric Flowers as a guard and Will Fuller are popular names that come up just because they're recognizable and they've had reasonably successful NFL careers. But I would not read too much into that if I was a Titans fan. Coach Mack tells me all the time to keep my powder dry. That's kind of the same guidance that I would give your audience here.
Buck Reising from the Buck Reising Show, giving us some golden nuggets here on trying to keep our focus, not getting too far down the road. Buck, I'm going to take a quick break real quick, but do you think you could hang with us for maybe another 5 minutes?
Sure.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, we're going to go ahead and have a quick sit down with Buck and basically just do like a little one-on-one interview, because we'll get to know the man behind all the hard work that gets to us, the fans, because that's the kind of man Buck Reising is. He is the man of the people. So we'll take our quick 30-second break, and when we come back, we'll get to that interview. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Monday evening. Joining me on the show tonight is the Buck Reising from 104.5, The Zones, the Buck Reising Show, and A to Z Sports Primetime. Buck, we definitely want to thank you for being on the show tonight. And Buck just vanished. We'll try and get him back as soon as we can. So we're probably having technical difficulties. So I'm sorry about that if he vanished. So that happens. But we'll try and move along as he comes back. So we just get bugs like that, folks. So sorry about that. We'll probably try and we'll get him back as soon as we can. So like I said, these bugs happen. So we'll get some comments real quick. Nothing against Willis. I just like KJ Jefferson. That's all. That's so good. That's good. I mean, ain't nothing to apologize about. I mean, you like who you like, and it's all good, man. All right, we got Buck back, and sorry about that, Buck. Working out the bugs, man.
That's okay. It happens. I know how it goes.
It's typical Monday stuff, but no worries. Glad to have you on the show. Make sure you follow Buck Reising on his Twitter page, and make sure you check him out on 104.5 The Zone, on his show, The Buck Reising Show, and check him out on A to Z Sports Primetime. Always doing good work, always enjoyable. Buck Reising, like I said, a man of the people.
That's, maybe if you keep saying it, somebody will believe you, but I don't know about that. I appreciate it, though.
I do my best to sell my wares, man. That's what I do. All right, Buck, we're glad to have you in. And really, I don't get to do a lot of interviews with a lot of people, so how about we just sit and have a power chat?
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
Well, Buck Reising, I've definitely got to enjoy you, especially over the years since you've been on A to Z Sports and you've transitioned over to 104.5 The Zone. So, Buck, tell us a little about your story, man. How did you start out? How did you end up into this line of work? I think that question broke his screen. All right, we're definitely having some issues, so we'll try once again. And I think we got Buck back. Buck, I think that question just broke the show.
Yeah, no, you took me to the power chat, and then all of a sudden you froze up on me. So I'm not sure. I think too much power for one conversation today.
This is a June Monday show, and I think you're right. I think I've got too much going on, too much power for this show. But we'll work it out.
All right, hit me with the question again. I'm ready.
All right. Like I said, just you started out basically from most of us, we've got to see you on A to C Sports Prime Time, and then you eventually worked your way up to 104.5 The Zone with the Buck Rising Show. So tell us, how did Buck Rising get started in this field?
Uh, it's a great question. I had zero sports knowledge, zero sports experience coming out of college. There was only two places that offered me a job out of college. It was a local television station in the city where I'm from, Evansville, Indiana, and an internship at 102.5 here in Nashville. If you're based in Nashville, the 102.5 The Game, the local ESPN affiliate. So I was interning there for no money for a while, and then I got hired to run like overnights, like board ops and stuff like that, from midnight to 6 a.m. I was doing it for a little while longer and found out that we didn't have anybody regularly going to Titans practice at all. So I just basically said, "Hey, can I go and get like audio and video?" I feel like that would be largely relevant to a sports talk station in town. And initially they were kind of reticent, but to their credit, they ended up letting me go. And then I just ended up being a 22-year-old with zero NFL reporter experience or any qualifications whatsoever credentialed in an NFL locker room. So I mean, since then it's kind of been it's been very learn on the fly. It's been a lot of fun though. Certainly, the Titans are an interesting team to cover, and most everybody there is really enjoyable to work with. But yeah, the A to Z thing happened a couple of years ago. I think it's been about 3 years with A to Z after Austin Stanley and Zach Bingham, who own A to Z Sports. They used to be the morning show at 102.5. They got fired. They went onto the dark web for a couple of years, starting the company. And then they hit me up one day after I was, I'd kind of hit my ceiling at 102.5, which just meant they didn't want to pay me any more money than they were already paying me. What little they were paying me, and said, do you want to try and do something different on the internet? I said, sure. And then a couple of years later, the Zone started calling me about, if they had any potential opportunities, why would I be interested? And that was before Midday 180 just kind of picked up and left, which kind of left a big hole in their lineup. So that spot ended up becoming the one that I now occupy through ways that I did not anticipate, nor do I think the Zone particularly anticipated that going down the way that it did. But it's all good. And I got to keep both jobs because my agent's a stud. And yeah, I really enjoyed her. Oh, think you lost your audio there, Michael. I can't hear you on my end.
Oh, we just get bugs left and right.
It's okay.
But like I said, definitely pays to have a good agent, especially having you in a market that's pretty passionate about their football team.
Sure. Yeah. No, Sean Wyman at Max Sports and Mark Lepselter, they've done an incredible job because I could not ask for a better situation than the one I have right now.
So I definitely got to ask you a couple of questions because I had a few people pin me down some and wanted to get some info from the real Buck Rising. So I said I'd see what I could do. So I'll start out with the first one. What was the biggest story that you've broken so far in your tenure here?
Probably Isaiah Wilson and the DUI, or no, I guess it wasn't a DUI specifically. Whatever the actual issue that he was arrested for after he did donuts in the middle of the Charlotte Pike. Yeah, that was one that I ended up getting. It was in like the middle of the night. Also, I think in June, right around when nothing was really happening after the 2020 rookie minicamp and OTA period. That was a pretty substantial one, given that he was a first-round pick, and that was before kind of the snowball effect of all the different issues that he was having, unfortunately, for Isaiah. But yeah, that was it's between that and Lawan getting popped for PEDs. Those are probably the two biggest ones that I've gotten.
Definitely some good breaking stories right there. Next question would be do you have any new suits coming up for the upcoming season?
Yeah, my tailor does a great job. He's got a pretty creative flair, so I appreciate that he's willing to risk it all on what he puts on me and sends me out there to Titans games with. But yeah, I try to pick up two or three new ones before the season gets started. So we are currently in process with the new wardrobe right now.
Now, I'll add in on that question. Do the shoes, are that another important part of the outfit?
Are the shoes important? Yes, very much so. It's a 16-hour day, and one, I know that people are going to take pictures of it and either, well, more than not, ruthlessly try and mock me on the internet. So the shoes are important both aesthetically and from a comfort standpoint because I'm going to be, I sit in the press box for the majority. I mean, obviously for the game, but after that. You're running all around the stadium. You're running around on the field pregame. Prime time, we typically do it after the games on Sunday nights from whatever stadium I'm in, whether that's Nissan or on the road. So it ends up being a long day, and especially now that the zone's got me doing an hour of pregame, 3 hours before kickoff. The shoes go into heavy consideration, especially depending on where we are in the world, because I know I'm not going to be able to wear the same thing in Nashville on September 11th when the Titans open against the Giants as I am later in the year when the Titans are in Green Bay in December for Thursday Night Football. There's got to be some consideration given to what I'm putting on my feet.
Agreed. Especially about that time of the year, you're probably going to be wearing snow boots.
For sure in Green Bay. That's going to be, if I got off easy with Buffalo in week 2, but Green Bay in December is not going to be ideal.
But we'll do 2 more questions. Next one is, what's the story about the salmon hoodie?
There really is no story other than I had a company called Legends send me a couple of tracksuits like that, and I wore one to practice. And Donald Page, the Titans team photographer, started sniping candids of me looking miserable in the rain in the salmon hoodie with I think I had a bomber jacket over it. So all of a sudden, a couple people turned it into a meme, and now the salmon hoodie has taken on a life of its own. But it's great. It's great workout gear, and I wear it regularly. But apparently, the salmon hoodie now comes with a stigma. Nobody says anything about the black one or the white one, but the salmon one, a little bit of a lightning rod.
Oh, the salmon one's definitely like a meme at this point. I think it's a legend on its own. So
it seems to have taken on a life of its own for sure.
And to finish out this, we're going to ask, we know you're on a weight loss goal right now, and you definitely have our support. Go hit that goal. So what is Buck Reising's final weight goal this year?
220 by training camp is the goal because it's now what happens during the season is nobody can project because for those people in your audience that do follow me on Twitter, I do the press box food reviews, and of course it's just mountains of free food sitting in there for 4 hours where we're all just bored and grazing because you guys can change the channel or it'll take you around the league on Red Zone, but we're just watching the same game for 4 hours, and you tend to get up and wander and see what they have at the MetLife press box buffet or whatever. So if I can get down to 220 by training camp, we got about 15 pounds to go and 6 weeks to do it. I feel pretty confident.
Buck Reising is definitely showing that he has got the confidence to stay away from the junk food, and we're supporting him the whole way throughout his diet. So,
thanks, man.
Well, Buck, to finish this out, I always have to ask our guests on here, anything special coming up that you might want to share with us? Just a little something top secret, but you can't give away too much. I understand.
Nothing super top secret. To be honest with you, I've got Kevin Byard on the radio show tomorrow, so that'll be fun. I know Titans fans like to hear from KB. We're gonna get a little nostalgic, I think, because KB's now been in the league for, the better part of a decade, which is crazy to think about. And his rookie year was my rookie year, quote unquote, as a reporter. So, going to chop it up a little bit with Byard, and other than that, nothing crazy. Just trying to get through to summer vacation and take a little bit of a break before I can take my next vacation next June.
And I guess I have to ask on that end, anything crazy for summer vacation, or just a little R&R?
Mostly R&R. I travel a lot during the season, and much to my girlfriend's chagrin, I don't want to travel when I don't have to. So we're probably just going to be laying low for a couple of weeks. I think we're going to go. I know we're going to do some hiking in Sevierville for a couple of days later in June, and looking at planning a little bit of a West Coast trip, and nothing crazy.
Buck Reising going on a hike potentially, but just make sure y'all don't try and bother him too much. He's trying to R&R y'all, so give the man a little rest. He's got a long season ahead of him, so believe me, we understand. Well, it was great having Buck Reising on the show. Definitely wish him the best going forward. But got Buck back. There we go.
Did all my answer make it?
Oh, it did. We got you in. So luckily,
Okay.
before the bug jumped in. So Buck Reising of the Buck Reising Show and A to Z Sports Primetime. I want to thank you very much for joining us on the show tonight. You're just been an absolute delight. We're looking forward to see all the info and insight that you give next year. Keep up the great work. We definitely appreciate everything that you've been doing, despite all the hard times we give you. I mean, we mess with you because we like you.
Listen, I embrace it. I enjoy it, and I very much appreciate you guys having me on. Have a great night, man.
Buck Reising, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Well, all right, guys, I want to remind you if you love the show tonight, help it grow. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And don't forget, we are doing a giveaway. It'll be on July 1st, 2022. I got to do the year. I mean, I'm just prompt like that. But make sure that you sign up for that. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube page, then go to Twitter, use the hashtag Power Hour Giveaway. I definitely want to make sure we get that jersey away to one of our deserving fans, because you all have come out in droves and supported the show. I've been off 12 days, and last week's show was one of the highest rated shows we've had since I've been on the air. And that has just been phenomenal. I'm very excited with how the show continues to grow because of the support you give us. It means a lot to me that you continue to watch and support and share us out there. So that means everything. Just means I'm likable and you all like me enough to keep coming back. So I appreciate it. And we got to give a shout out to some of our commenters out there. Our buddy P Shark from Let's Tighten Up Podcast. What's up, y'all? Technical difficulties. Of course, Shark. It always happens with the big guests on the show. I mean, it always happens, but we bounce through it. Mom's in the house. Always great having her there. Always a joy to have you. Mom, of course, also saying enjoyed the show. Thanks, Buck, for being on. Great having you on, Mom. Say hi to Jamie and Leon for me while you're there at the house. Always appreciate you being on. Lou, man, always great having you on the show, too. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's just been a thrill for me once again to be back and just be refreshed and hit this thing, hit the ground running. Always remember, we're doing this for you. We're here to entertain you. That's the fun of it. It's a sports show. We like talking sports. We like talking a little bit of realness. And of course, just the fact of the matter is, I enjoy doing this. The fact that I get to wake up every week and know I've got a show just helps me get out of bed a little bit. So I appreciate all you for your support and everything that you continue to do to make this show thrive. Up here, once again, go Titans, kick massive tail. Al, always great seeing you. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. Once again, I am Michael Bishop with the Power Hour. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more content on your way out. That's how we continue to grow because of your support. So make sure you do that. I want to thank Buck Reising once again for joining us on the show tonight. It was a joy to have him on there. We wish him the best on the upcoming season. Don't forget to check out his show tomorrow night. He'll have Kevin Byard, or it might be tomorrow morning. I'm sorry. But he will have Kevin Byard on the show. Check that out. It'll be a great listen. So make sure you don't miss that. And all you out there, thank you once again for joining us on the Power Hour and enjoying the show. I'm your host, Michael Bishop. Take care and tighten up.